Hi everybody, I'm Dustin.
I'm Onna.
And we are not qualified to investigate the paranormal, but we might be more qualified than...
Ariana Huffington of the Huffington Post.
Also Ariana Grande. We are more qualified than Ariana Grande.
Yep.
That's good to know. Okay, everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is the podcast.
The only one you need.
For all your news, listen to us, and we will guide you in the right direction of the paranormal, and even for politics, other things too. No, don't listen to us for politics. Don't even listen to us for the paranormal. As a matter of fact, the very first things that we say at the beginning of every single podcast is that we are not qualified to be doing this. So why are we? Well, because there are lots of other people out there who are talking about this and also are not qualified to be doing it. So
yeah,
here we are.
And because we have other qualifications.
We do have other qualifications. Many skills here. I can throw a bunch of pennies on the ground and tell you exactly how many there are within 5 seconds.
You can?
No.
You've been holding out on me, these special skills?
No, that's a special skill. Is that going to make us millions or something?
I don't know what that's going to do.
Oh, no. Here we are. Okay. I say a lot of things almost every episode. And one of those things is that I'm really excited about tonight's story. And I am, but I'm not. The other thing that I usually say is that we're gonna shake things up a little bit. We're gonna do things a little different. And we don't. It's pretty no, it's pretty formulaic. Like I tell 2 to 3 stories. Yeah. Maybe I'll go into a definition of what things are. Yeah. And then we talk about the paranormal possibilities and the scientific possibilities behind what's going on. Right? So I think that's what we're doing here now. Okay.
So you're prefacing this with we're going to do the same thing we typically do.
We're going to do the same thing that we always do. If you tuned in to relax and have the same old thing happen over and over again, guess what? Welcome in, brother and sister.
Prepare to be tuned in.
This is it. Oh, you said it.
I did.
You said it. Okay. I have a bedtime story to tell you.
Tell me a bedtime story.
In the tranquil seaside town they had just moved to, Onna and Dustin found a charming house perched precariously near the edge of the sea. This was their new start, a sanctuary away from the clamor of city life. Their first day was filled with the standard confusion and exhaustion that comes with moving. Furniture was arranged, boxes were unpacked, and by nightfall, the couple was ready for their first night in their new home. As the tide whispered its ceaseless lullaby and the moon bathed the house in a soft glow, Dustin awoke from his sleep with a start. His eyes darted about the room. His breathing became shallow and rapid. He was unable to move. A familiar sense of dread washed over him. He was paralyzed.
Whoa. Is this about us?
Are we breaking the fifth wall? Dustin's eyes fell upon the slightly ajar door of their bedroom. A chilling figure stood there, the silhouette of a young girl. Her hair hung like curtains, shrouding her features, save for her eyes. Those 2 orbs bore into Dustin with a stare filled with malice and contempt. He tried to ask her, "What are you doing in my house?" But no words came out. The girl didn't move, only raised one arm and pointed directly at him.
"The girl,"
she whispered, her voice echoing ominously in the silent room.
"The girl.
The girl. The girl." Each time her voice became louder and more filled with hatred. Dustin tried to scream, his heart pounding wildly against his ribs, but all that escaped was a feeble whimper, barely audible even to his own ears. Suddenly he felt a warm hand on his shoulder. "Dustin?" Anna's voice cut through the icy fear that gripped him. His paralysis broke, and he shot upright, panting, his eyes darting to the door, but the ghostly figure was gone. "Dustin, are you okay?" Anna asked, concern etched on her soft features.
She sounds nice.
"You were making this strange sound. It woke me up." He took a moment to regain his composure before responding. "Sleep paralysis," he managed, rubbing his face with trembling hands. It was just another episode. Even though the figure was gone, her words echoed ominously in his mind. The girl, the girl, the girl. All he wanted to do was return to a peaceful sleep, holding Anna close, away from the haunting gaze of the spectral girl. And that's the end of the first story.
Wow.
That's my bedtime story. Thoughts?
Ooh. Ooh, That sounds vaguely familiar. I think you told me when that happened. That I don't know.
woke me up.
How autobiographical is this?
This is 100% autobiographical, and it's pretty accurate as far as time frame of our lives go. You know that I don't like to say the word suffer because I don't feel like I really suffer from this. It's just something that happens every once in a while, maybe 5 times a year, which is sleep paralysis. And it does affect 1 in 5 Americans at least once in their life. And some Americans have it, some people in the world have it more than other people. And I just am one of those people who have it more. And we'll get into that in a little bit. And I think you're going to have a lot to say about that as well. But this was actually something that happened. And you and I actually do, you do wake me up like this. Not often, but it happens.
Yeah, every now and then.
Every now and then. But this is one of those ones that really stuck with me. It was I have vivid dreams and I have sleep paralysis episodes that happen. Sometimes they're pleasant, sometimes they're not. This was not. It was not a pleasant experience. And that is kind of all I can do is kind of, make a noise, make somewhat of a noise. And then usually that goes outside of my sleep. And you're able to hear it, and it wakes you up, and you wake me up.
How many seconds or minutes do you think that night was, or that they typically are for you?
Oh, I have no idea. You mean like in the real world? How long?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Right?
How would I know that?
Yeah. Because I was just looking at the descriptions, and you were looking at some of the numbers on the prevalence rates of it, and I hadn't in many years seen the estimates of how long people are experiencing that, and I didn't even know they had. How do they even get good, accurate estimates? It has to be sleep studies of people with sleep paralysis, but because
there
it can
sleep studies, and I'm going to show you some evidence of the paranormal during a sleep study. But go ahead.
It's interesting. Because I was surprised to hear that it ranges from several seconds to 20 minutes. And then the average is like 6 minutes. And I was just like, wow, they have to have, I wonder how solid that data is and like what kind of sample size. So.
Yeah, I think it is. And it can be a disorder. It can be something that is so common in somebody's life that it ruins their sleep because they're terrified to go back to sleep. They're terrified to have another vivid dream. They're terrified to be paralyzed laying in their bed.
Yeah, it can contribute to other sleep problems.
Completely understandable, right? So yeah, this is something that affects me. Anna is actually a sleep therapy expert. What's the word to say?
One of my specialties is insomnia, and I provide cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is the frontline treatment recommended by the American Sleep Medicine Association.
For sleep paralysis as well?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, really? Okay. That's just what I read on Wikipedia, but you are the expert, so you tell me where Wikipedia is wrong.
It might be like a helpful treatment, but we'll talk about why that is or isn't. We'll hold off on that because, I could go down a whole sidetrack on that. Yeah. But it could be helpful. It can help many, many people. But in that I have a lot of experience assessing, diagnosing, and treating insomnia, you have to also be aware of co-occurring conditions. And sleep paralysis is one of the parasomnias that can co-occur with insomnia and several other mental health conditions that I treat.
Got it. Okay. So the first thing, I guess the one thing I want to talk about real quick is that I've had this as far back as I can remember. I do remember when I finally had the ability to put a name to what was going on with me. I don't remember what I thought it was before. I didn't necessarily think it was anything paranormal, although that might have been described to me at some point because I was somewhat raised in a religious house. I guess like weird Southern Pentecostal is the best way to put some of the more wacky churches that I've been to, that I went to in my childhood. And there were people there that definitely believed in some of the paranormal explanations for sleep paralysis that I'm going to go into. But I don't remember necessarily thinking I was being possessed by a demon or anything crazy like that. But I had a buddy who's actually my drummer for my band at the time who told me about this band who basically wrote an entire album based upon letters that the lead singer received from fans about their experiences with a thing called sleep paralysis. And I had no idea what it was. I was like, oh, what's that? When he explained it to me, I was like, oh my God, I get that all the time.
When was this?
2002-ish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that there's some listeners out there, some of you younger millennials and you Generation Zers who are like, how could you like not know about something? You just look it up online. You know what we had? We had Alta Vista back then. We didn't have Google. We had Lycos. Okay.
Right.
We had Yahoo. And y'all know what that's like, right? What it's like now. It wasn't any better back then. It was probably worse. So you couldn't just look things up like that. I think WebMD was kind of around, but they didn't necessarily have psychological things or anything like that. It was like, you've got a spiral fracture because your bone's sticking out of your leg. You should go to the hospital immediately. Like that's kind of the level it was at. Or you have cancer all the time, right? And it still is kind of like that. But you just didn't have that kind of. You would just have to hear about something. From a friend, and then you'd be like, oh wait, I do have that, because it wasn't something that I talked about a lot, and again, it didn't affect me too much. Probably back then, maybe 10 times a year, and it goes through phases where I get it more often, but there's a reason for that too, which I'm sure Anna will get into. But so yeah, anyway, the name of this album was El Cielo. I can't pronounce that. Cielo.
What band?
Dredge. Dredg. That's Dredge, right?
Yeah, never heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of Dredge. I mean, I think I actually listened to the album a little bit. It wasn't my thing, but it was kind of eye-opening because I read the lyrics, because he had the CD insert, so I read the lyrics, which again, for you younger millennials and you Generation Zeros out there, there used to be this insert that came within CDs and also albums and also tapes and also everything before that would actually have the lyrics on them for the most part of like the songs that were on the album.
On paper.
On paper. Ew, it's paper.
It's paper.
It's so retro. But anyway, so that's kind of how I finally put a name to the thing that I had. And once I heard that there was enough people out there writing to an alternative rock band and they made an album about it, I was like, I'm not alone in this. And any ideas that it may have been paranormal were gone at that point. Because I'm like, no, if enough people are suffering from this, it's probably some kind of psychological thing or some kind of thing that everybody gets.
Yeah.
Right? Like things we just don't talk about as a society. And sure enough, it is, 1 in 5. Again, 1 in 5 people around the world. I think I said earlier in the US, but I think it's around the world. 1 in 5 people have this at least once within their life.
Okay. And the visions.
Yeah.
How common was that for you?
Oh, every single time.
Okay.
Every single time with the visions. It's turned into this thing where now you can kind of tell. I'm old enough now where I've had this happen my entire life, so I can kind of tell the signs before the episode kicks off.
Wait, as you're falling asleep?
Yeah. And once that happens, it's a little more in my control what happens within the rest of the dream.
Yeah.
And when that happens, obviously I try to steer it in the direction of non-terrifying things, like dead ghost girls saying the girl and pointing at me.
So you have almost like a lucid dream capacity. Yeah,
no, I do. And I did some research. I did do some research on this as well throughout my 20s. And I learned some tricks on how you can actually continue the lucid dream, because most of the time when you realize you're dreaming, you wake up, right? I can feel myself waking up and I can stop myself from doing it within the dream. And one of the tricks that I use all the time, and it works for me, I'm not going to say it works for everybody, is that within your dream, if you imagine whatever body you're inhabiting or, whatever you see as your physical form, if you put your arms out to your sides and you spin around, you get to stay in your dream for a little bit longer. That stops me from waking up.
This is a different sort of episode.
Welcome. Welcome to Dustin's After Hours. I told you it was a bedtime story.
It is.
So the one thing I do want to talk about here as well are the paranormal explanations, because this is something that has been documented since 5400 BC, meaning that as long as humans have been around and able to dream, there has been sleep paralysis or some indications that humans have gone through sleep paralysis.
You said 5400 BC.
Yeah.
That's not much is documented from.
No, I know, but there. Hold on, let me get into it.
Okay.
Because there are writings.
Okay.
There are things in the things. Because guess what's been around? Forever. Religion.
Oh, I was gonna say paper. I was like, no, not paper.
Religion, which kind of led to paper and everybody writing things down, but only certain people could do it back then, and just back when. Let's make religion great again. So. Jump into paranormal explanations real quick here, if you don't mind.
Oh, please. That's half of what we're here to do.
Okay. Sleep paralysis is a well-documented sleep phenomena. There are many paranormal interpretations of sleep paralysis that exist in different cultures around the world. These interpretations often revolve around the experiences of visual and auditory hallucinations that can accompany sleep paralysis, which can make the experience feel incredibly real and often terrifying. The first one is ghostly visitations and hauntings. In some cultures, sleep paralysis is thought to occur due to an unwanted visit by a ghost or spirit. The inability to move or speak is attributed to the spirit's control over the individual. The vivid, often disturbing hallucinations that can accompany sleep paralysis are perceived as interactions with these spiritual entities. And I think that's the main one. We'll get into the second main one's coming up, but then we get into like kind of just sub-genres of the main ones. But anyway, the second one is alien abductions. Some people interpret their episodes of sleep paralysis as evidence of extraterrestrial intervention or abduction. They might report seeing strange creatures, feeling sensations of floating or being outside their bodies, or experiencing lost periods of time, all of which are common experiences in sleep paralysis, but are interpreted as physical experiences rather than hallucinations.
They forget that time is a perception as well.
That's why when you ask me how long does it last, I'm like, when I'm frightened, when I'm trying to scream my head off in my sleep, it seems like a really long time.
Yeah, it's so difficult to estimate or describe our own sleep phenomena. That's where sleep studies come in.
The oldest reason is coming up here. Demonic possession or attacks. In certain cultures and belief systems, sleep paralysis is seen as evidence of demonic attack or possession. The person may feel pressure on their chest as if something heavy is sitting there and may perceive a malevolent presence in the room. This has led to interpretations involving demons or evil spirits. Some of the earliest writings related to sleep paralysis come from Mesopotamia, from around 2400 BC. These accounts refer to Liluthu, a female demon. Researchers believe that it is from early folklore that the concepts of incubus, succubus, and the nightmare descended. Okay, so incubi and succubi. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Real quick, I'm going to skip over the next two just to talk about those. In medieval Europe, sleep paralysis was often explained as an attack by an incubus or succubus, mythological demons that were believed to sit on the chest of sleeping individuals, rendering them immobile and inducing horrifying dreams. Similar beings have also been mentioned in Buddhist and Arabic writings. So, pre-everything, right? We're talking... I think I said 5,200. I'm sorry. 2,400.
Yeah.
I was a couple thousand years off.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what? Some of the Buddhist writings might have been a little bit older, but I'll have to go back and look at that.
Yeah. And it's not uncommon for pre-science explanations to be spiritual or
for sure.
paranormal.
We don't understand
supernatural
what's going on.
in nature. Yeah.
It's God. You know, that's the only explanation that
or,
we can...
on the flip side, it's...
the devil.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of the devil, another name for this in Western culture is the old hag syndrome. This is a Yeah, no, I know. This is a phenomenon that occurs during sleep paralysis where the person feels a presence of a supernatural creature suffocating or terrifying them. This has been widely reported across different cultures and often involves a terrifying witch or hag.
Why?
I mean, mine was a girl in the explanation that I said. That was, but I would never call her a hag or a witch even, I think. To me, it seemed like a dead girl, like a girl who had died in the house that we had just moved into.
Like how old?
Oh, 12.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the story your mind made up, that she's a ghost of someone who died in this house.
Oh, I mean, I think that's what somebody would think. You know, it's a brand new house.
Oh, it's not anything that crossed your mind at the time.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Oh.
But I'm so used to it, I just go back to sleep.
Right. So you, having been 20 years into having these, you were sort of like, it's not a ghost.
Yeah. Okay. Right. No, I rolled right back over and went to sleep after that. But again, it's vivid. I do remember lots of details from it. I still remember the details from it probably because it is so terrifying, and I'm sure you have something to say about that as well. The last thing here... The last thing here is something, also another paranormal thing that we'll probably eventually talk about, but it's a thing that is commonly known as shadow people. Some who have experienced sleep paralysis report seeing shadowy figures, sometimes referred to as shadow people during their episodes. The shadowy figures are often perceived as malevolent, contributing to the fear and anxiety associated with the experience. And those are just some of the paranormal explanations that a lot of people wrap around sleep paralysis. There's been lots of studies done on people who have sleep paralysis because it can be considered a sleep disorder or a symptom of a larger sleep disorder, and therefore they go into sleep studies, right? When sleep studies are done, that's basically I'll let you explain that, but turns out there's not very many things supernatural about it.
It turns out.
However, I will say that, and I'm going to pass it back over to you. When it comes back to me, we're going to go through, who was it? BuzzFeed did a documentary on sleep paralysis, and they asked for user submissions, and then they published some of those user submissions, and they're about a paragraph long each. I'm going to read a couple of them because there are themes in those that match themes in mine and match themes in some of the things that I just read.
Yeah.
And so there is this, we've talked about this before, where there is, as human beings, there are some fears that we all have.
Yep.
Because of who we are, what we evolve from, and where we evolve from. Also cultural context. But as we said, these span cultures. So it's difficult to pinpoint some of those things. Sleep paralysis is cross-culture. It is everywhere. But before I dive into kind of the themes that we see and how those connect back to the supernatural, what's up, Doc?
What? Well, you just said so many things. What would you want to know more about? Or
Yeah, and we've talked about it on the pod before, where we go into how we see cross-culturally without any connection possibly. Like you could go to a remote location and talk to a tribe that's never talked to a Western civilization before, and there would be people within their civilization who had a dream about a shadow person, or who have had a dream about an old witch or some other type of similar, whatever their similar entity would be.
Yeah. And so common themes in our subconscious, if you want to call a dream state like that, it's an altered state of consciousness. So yeah, there are common themes. And then the link with sleep paralysis is what I think might be important to differentiate. Is like sleep paralysis, simply put, is the loss of motor control experienced during some phase of sleep that is experienced that while conscious in a phase, and you're still in a phase of sleep. We can talk about that too. So then there are these associated auditory and visual experiences that happen. And you're talking about like a vision of a shadow person, or what would really then be called like an intruder. The theme is like an intruder hallucination. And when we say hallucination, because we are resting on the recognition that these are internal stimuli that you're perceiving, and they're not reality based. And they have themes though, and those themes do, as you say, cut across cultures of like the intruder, whether it's a shadow figure intruder or what we might call a ghost, and that's where the cultural piece comes in. What do you label that intruder? Right. That's the vision piece. Then there's the sensory perception of like leaving one's body.
Oh yeah.
Like falling or levitating. I guess that maybe then some people might say that's evidence of an alien abduction.
Right. So some people perceive that as alien abduction or something.
That seems to fit in that category. And I just guessed that. That's how
that happens to me during these episodes.
But you don't attribute
out-of-body experiences where I can look back on myself. I can, float around the room. I can fly to other areas of the world, wherever I want, wherever my imagination can take me, which again is a very pleasant experience for the most part. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. But you experience as a physical, as your body separating from your consciousness, or a movement of your body that you don't control. And that part is the sleep paralysis part. And then the third common theme of co-occurring physical sensations is the chest pressure one. Whereas again, the incubus, the succubus, the witch, the demon, whatever, sitting on your chest interpretation. So what I think, if I could just narrow that down, is we've got the hallucinations that we experience, whether they're auditory, visual, or physical sensations, and then the sleep paralysis, the paralysis part of it. The I can't control my body part of it. And I think when people experience a hallucination and aren't aware that it's a hallucination and they see it as in reality, then it becomes a faulty directional association, a causal link they make. This external stimuli that's actually internal, but they're attributing to external, like a ghost or an incubus or succubus or an alien, is causing my loss of motor control. Right. When in reality, it's the conscious awareness of the loss of motor control that makes it sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Every single person who experiences REM sleep experiences sleep paralysis nearly like every single night. Yeah. And most people don't know that. And when my students, my freshmen, I would be teaching about sleep and levels of consciousness. And before I even start the lecture, there's a hand up. I have sleep paralysis. And of course, I react to them with like absolute compassion and say, I want to hear about that. We'll talk more about what those experiences are like when you become aware of your sleep paralysis. Right. And then I say to does anyone in the room, who knows that everyone does actually experience sleep paralysis? Right. And we talk about why that is physiologically. And then the disorder part, or the parasomnia part, I want to say, I'm hesitant to even call it a disorder.
No, me too.
because it's not a.
I mean, you're a doctor. No,
well, we don't have
view
a
it myself as a disorder. I'm not like, oh, I have a disorder. I have sleep. I don't see it. And I was hesitant to call it like I suffer from sleep paralysis. I don't suffer from it. I really don't. I have these episodes that happen every once in a while. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, when we use words like hallucination, that can be scary in and of itself.
I'm tripping.
You're tripping on sleep, man. Because sleep isn't, again, we talked about it before, like an altered state of consciousness. It's one of those things, but we all go through it every day.
Yep.
Hopefully, if you're sleeping every day, and lo and behold, people with sleep difficulties may have a range of parasomnias, and this is one of them that is almost as common as insomnia. I didn't know that.
Okay.
When you said 1 in 5, like insomnia is 1 in 5 people as well.
Well, 1 in 5 people have it at least once in their life.
Yeah, 20% lifetime.
I think it's a lot less who are like me who have it, 5 times a year.
Yeah, no, that.
And then some people have it like every night.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's terrifying.
Yeah. That's, you are, and diagnosing you on our podcast, it's definitely not cool to do that to my own husband without proper assessment, but you're having it probably more than most people.
Stop diagnosing me. How dare you?
But the thing is, you have adjusted such that those quote hallucination part of it, the peripheral symptoms that go along with it, don't cause you the distress that they cause other people.
Well, when I saw that girl, and this was only like a year or 2 years ago, when I saw that girl, she was terrifying. I was really trying to scream because I couldn't move, because I was trying to get up to like go get up and try to do something, like block her or whatever from entering the room, and I couldn't. So I was trying to like scream myself awake, right? Which is, so I can move something, and it's I think the reason why, obviously I can't move my jaw, right? Because like you said, we're all experiencing sleep paralysis, so we all like our nervous system shuts down because it doesn't want us flailing like in our sleep and doing all kinds of crazy
not
shit.
like black and white though, not like complete loss of
right
functioning. We move,
and then I'm not able to scream because your body also regulates your respiration, so you can't pull in a deep breath, right? You can't you just can't do that. So whatever's in your lungs from being able to, what your body regulates you as being able to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's like my cue with you now is if I'm making that sound, and you've had to wake me up probably 3 or 4 times. You've noticed it's woken you up, and you've woken me up during it. Yeah. This wasn't even the most recent thing that's happened. You woke me up more recently than this.
Oh gosh.
And you don't remember. And maybe you're like half asleep too.
I am.
So you just don't remember it.
So half.
Maybe this whole thing is a hallucination. I don't have this at all, and we're just all bullshitting here.
Well, that's what's so important about knowing when you need support, from your partner or from a health provider. Should I explain what I meant by everybody has sleep paralysis?
Yeah, you should definitely go into that, because I know what you meant, but you need to talk about there's a different part of this where I'm aware when I am, because of course our central nervous system shuts certain things down, so we're not flailing in our sleep and hitting our partners in the face accidentally, of course. But then there's this part where aware of it and conscious, and some people who suffer from this actually are like eyes open. Yeah. And they are awake, but their body is still in that sleep area. So they're not just dreaming, but their eyes are are open, and they're seeing the room that they're in. Yeah. Layered on top of that is their dream state. Layered on top of that is their awareness of their paralysis. And I think I've gone through that before, but there's no way to tell because I've never done a sleep study, and I don't wake you up until I'm screaming. So
everybody's going to message you like, you should do a sleep study. Listen, like, really?
Oh, maybe I should. I don't know. There's a lot of other things going on in my life, and maybe the sleep study is in order. But anyway, for this, I've come to peace with it, and I'm at a good spot with it. I really am. Like, it doesn't bother. I know you're like, how can that not bother you? You dreamed of this little girl like pointing at you, and she was clearly dead. Like, in my mind, she was clearly dead, like a ghost or something like that. But also, it was a fucking dream. And nightmares are something we've talked about a lot too. Yeah. For a really long time in my life, I had a nightmare every single night. And I've talked to you about that before. But again, I've come to a good place where as weird as this sounds, like, it's just a nightmare. You just wake up from it. You're like, oh, that was freaky. And then you go back to bed and you have a good night's sleep.
Yeah. And so
sometimes, most of the time.
You just touched on so many different things that
I know.
That
sorry. But you explain sleep paralysis. That's where we left off.
The most basic word for it that is like a non-clinical word for it, it's atonia. It's just a loss of muscle control that is adaptive when we're in REM sleep so that we don't act out our dreams. That's theoretically why we experience atonia while we're sleeping.
So we don't accidentally
kick,
our,
run, jump off the bed into our partner,
spit.
bite, whatever weird things you might do in your dreams.
Yep.
Maybe that's, again, as I think I mentioned in a previous episode, but we don't know. We know a lot about the topography of sleep because of sleep clinics, sleep labs, sleep studies, sleep science has advanced a lot. We know a lot about what sleep looks like, and we have different theories about the function of the different stages of sleep and the things our body and our brain do while we sleep.
Right.
So that, I think, is
and which demons are responsible for what disorders.
They're all named in the no. So REM sleep, and I don't even want to take for granted that everyone knows what that is, but it's rapid eye movement sleep. It's the fourth stage of sleep, if you want to call it that. And it's where our dreams happen. Typically, we can dream in stage 1 or stage 2 sleep, like our lighter stages of sleep or even deep sleep. But stage 3 deep sleep and stage 4 REM sleep are both types of deep sleep.
Yeah.
They just look really different in the brain. And so part of the difference in the brain of REM sleep is that the brain wave activity looks actually a lot like being awake. And that's different from the first 3 phases of sleep, that like it's the most similar to an awake brain. And that might be why the atonia that we're experiencing in REM sleep for most people will stop when we wake up, because for most of us, we gradually go back into deep sleep and light phases of sleep, and we wake up gradually. When people wake abruptly, like from a nightmare, or who have another parasomnia that disrupts the order or the levels or the stages of sleep, they might become pretty fully consciousness that like eyes open or some level of consciousness, but their body, their peripheral nervous system hasn't gotten the message yet.
Right.
And that's a very oversimplified. Again, I treat insomnia, but I am not, like, this isn't my doctoral area, and I'm not a neuropsychologist or a neurosleep specialist. So like I'm doing this at like what I do with my clients, because what I love to do as a clinician is to help people understand things on a basic enough level.
Yeah. Well, this is a podcast. So,
okay. So I always just feel like I have to say I'm not like the expert. I have some expertise.
She's an expert. Just
don't. No.
Don't just shut up. You shut your mouth.
So that's where what we call sleep paralysis is when that atonia or sleep paralysis that we all normatively have is disrupted. It's considered a REM behavior disorder, I think. Well, it's akin to a REM behavior disorder, like sleepwalking, which is another example of you're supposed to be having atonia, but you're not. Yeah. So it's kind of the flip side of it. Yeah. You're not supposed to walk around while you're in REM sleep or deep sleep. So
we had people who were kicked out of boot camp, actually, anecdotally, because they sleptwalked.
Not good for them, but like it's a very dangerous condition. We laugh about it because it's more common as when we're kids, when we're in safe environments, but for an adult, that's really dangerous.
Right. And for everybody out there, I was in the Coast Guard, so you can imagine being on a boat in the middle of the ocean and having someone sleepwalk.
Oh,
you can't do it. It's impossible. So we did have guys who, unfortunately, they wanted to serve, but they couldn't because they sleptwalked.
It's not even just like the ridiculous image of someone walking off the ship. It's if you're underneath, you can trip every few feet on one of those ships, like just the way the door holes are.
It's the going overboard thing, though. I think that is the biggest concern.
I guess. I mean, how many people are sleeping on the deck? But whatever. Yeah.
Well, people who sleepwalk can go upstairs, go downstairs.
Yeah, they can get all over the place, for sure.
When you walk those corridors enough, it's muscle memory.
You're right. Yeah. That's a good point. I think I was just going to explain what I meant by everyone has sleep paralysis.
And you were.
But when it becomes dysregulated,
right,
and it's then a REM behavior disorder, whether it's like excessive sleep paralysis and like mismatched, as in what we're talking about, whether it's sleepwalking, and also, as you mentioned, the fully awake while also having, so because it's more common.
I think I've done that a few times.
So that's going to be more indicative of a pretty severe REM behavior disorder or a pretty severe sleep disorder like narcolepsy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So because with narcolepsy, like you're awake and then you're asleep. Or, I mean, not like I'm snapping my fingers like I'm,
sleep.
Right. I'm not hypnotizing anyone. But it can feel like that level, your levels of consciousness can alter very rapidly. But again, just like insomnia, most cases of narcolepsy are not that severe. They're much more like in and out of difficulty sleeping or in and out, like I have to nap all day or pulled to nap more than you want to be. So sleep paralysis co-occurs with narcolepsy, co-occurs with insomnia to some extent, not a ton, more commonly with like post-traumatic stress disorder and other anxiety disorders. Because there may be this, we don't know, I think, but to look at more of the articles, but I think there's an aspect of like heightened alertness in parts of the brain, and then that REM sleep does not counteract.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, so you're still too alert. So when you can treat PTSD, that's where there might be the role of CBT for insomnia, or treatments for anxiety disorders, or treatments for PTSD. If you can treat anything that's causing a heightened alert state and help people calm, then maybe you'll have less of those episodes with the REM sleep not being able to kind of counterbalance that.
Right.
Totally oversimplified way of saying it, but
no, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
And I get it. And yeah, it's, when I looked up kind of the causes for it when I was younger, and I finally put a name for it, lack of sleep is one of, like, you're overtired. And that definitely triggers it for me. It's been like a long, like it happens. And just to go a little bit more into myself, when it does happen and there are cues that I know it's about to happen, one of those cues is that there's this static sound. It's a really loud kind of whooshing, like that happens, and I know it's coming. And if I can catch it early enough, I can turn it into a happy dream. But if I don't, then then it's at my subconscious's whim.
Yeah.
As to what will happen during the dream. And sometimes it's still happy, don't get me wrong. And I also want to preface this with, I did not have, like, I've had this since I was a kid. I did not have a traumatic childhood at all. I had a very good childhood, comparatively speaking. No trauma. I often tell Onna that I feel like I've had a very charmed life, and I believe that 100%. So nothing crazy there. This is probably all genetics or all some other thing that's explainable that doesn't have anything to do with trauma or anything psychological that happened to me.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because it does kind of swing it back to recognizing that the sleep disorders have a neurobiological basis for the most part.
Right.
Now, insomnia is like an interesting one, because it's got a your circadian rhythms are out of whack, or your sleep cycles, if you want to, like, they're not in sync. So there's a biological thing happening.
Yeah.
But it's mostly behavioral around habits and thoughts and beliefs and experiences around sleep. And so it's so responsive to cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
But something like narcolepsy, or REM behavior disorders, or extreme parasomnias, like very chronic sleep paralysis, are more neurobiological in nature, and they need to be assessed by sleep specialists in sleep lab, sleep clinics, and looked at in a more comprehensive way, or more pinpointed way, I should say. I think.
Yeah.
And you brought up, there was another piece there. Again, I'm always so many pieces I don't want to forget.
The whooshing sound?
The whooshing sound. Oh, yeah. That's what I wanted to say.
And also a feeling of weightlessness. Like I feel like I am flying or falling.
Yeah.
That's another thing that happens. But go ahead.
Okay. Two things with that. One is another piece. Parasomnias, like sleep paralysis, sleep paralysis especially, is pretty more common with people who experience their dreams in a more lucid way, or more common nightmares. And that doesn't, it's actually the ability to remember them, or to experience them in more late stages of sleep. So as I mentioned, you can have dreams in late stages of sleep. What we call lucid dreaming is the ability to alter your dreams, or feel like a more you're dreaming while in a later stage of sleep, so you're more semi-conscious in that way. And that might be why you can interact with that dream to some extent.
Yeah.
That, again, might be just a genetic thing. There are just people who might have more lucid dreaming, or more late stage sleep dreaming. It's the way their brain is wired.
I heard it's something you can practice and get better. Lucid dreaming is something you can practice and get better at. I don't know if that's true or not, because I've always had a proclivity. Is that right? I've always had the propensity.
Maybe.
Either the propensity or proclivity to be able to do it.
Yeah, and that,
right?
again, I think
naturally,
provides some evidence that you might have sort of a be a part of the group of people who have these genetic predispositions to those types of parasomnias. And for the rest of us, we just mostly dream in REM sleep. We barely remember. We mostly just remember our last dream of the night, and we sometimes have dreams where we're like, oh, I think I'm dreaming. And then we wake up, or then we just move on to the next dream. Right. Most of us will have, to go back to that feeling, that sensation of falling, that very common, I kind of think of it as you're shifting from stage 2 sleep into stage 3 sleep, you're drifting off to sleep feeling. That's that I'm falling sensation. where many of us either don't notice it or just have become accustomed to it, part of our sleep. But if you are a more lucid dreamer, or you have more of a parasomnia-like kind of tendencies, you might interpret that sensation as distressing, or as something you can interact with. And that's where it's one of those categories of common hallucinations. It's not the same as like a schizophrenia hallucination, a daytime, full, conscious, awake hallucination. This is called if you're falling asleep, it's a hypnagogic hallucination or hypnagogic. I'm terrible at pronouncing that. They're just technical terms for hallucinations when you're falling asleep or when you're waking up. Hypnopompic, hypnagogic, whatever.
Of course, we're all going to get mad at you for not pronouncing it right here,
so but also, I'm just sleepy, so I'm forgetting words.
Propensity and proclivity. A propensity is when you are trying to do something, you want to do something.
Yeah, proclivity is when you are good at something.
When you are just naturally
good
at
or
something.
A predisposition has
my
nothing to
fault.
do with skills or abilities.
I put that in your head, so I
thank you. You put the P words in my head. Okay, people can get better at lucid dreaming. I don't know. Now you're starting to get into that whole
I don't know either.
Meditation, transcendental meditation stuff. And I think that we can strengthen. I know that you can strengthen your alpha wave capacity by just mindfulness meditation, which is this essentially getting yourself into like a light sleep type of brain during the day. And so you can relax more easily. That's a skill that we all could get better at to help us have better sleep. The paradox of being people, if you have sleep paralysis and you're in a category of people who have strong lucid dream abilities, it's whether it's distressing or not. And if you are using that to your advantage to be able to relax more or to be able to work with like nightmares, which also can be more common for people with parasomnias. It's one of the chronic nightmare issues with parasomnias. You can use it doesn't have super strong evidence. I think it's like a B rating evidence of like imaginal imagery rehearsal training or imagery rehearsal therapy, where if you have a chronic nightmare, like the same type of dream, to practice that, like rehearse that dream before bed and like alter it a bit. It should be guided by a therapist. And it's, again, not super strong evidence for it, but some people can alter those nightmares on purpose. It's kind of rehearsing a dream and then being able to change it a little bit when you actually have the dream. Yeah, it's such a fascinating tapestry, our sleep landscape. Mixing metaphors.
Yes, it is. And so do you want to hear some other user submitted experiences with this?
Yeah, and I'll just tell me more sleep stories.
Okay. This one, and again, this is BuzzFeed did a user submission thing where they kind of, pick their top favorites or whatever. And I'm not sure if they ever made a documentary on it. I didn't see anything, but I'll put the link in this, of course, in our show notes so that everybody can go and read these if they want. I'm just going to read a couple. So this one was submitted by Charlotte C. The first time it happened, I remember waking and an enormous pressure bearing down on me and a loud, almost deafening buzz sound in my ears. So already we have two things that we've talked about, right? We have that pressure, the incubus succubus sitting on your chest, and the deafening buzzing sound in my ears. That's something that I experience all the time. That's the whooshing sound that I think that's the same thing. I felt threatened as though some malevolent demonic presence was hovering above me, trying to possess me, trying to force itself into my body, and I was unable to fight it off. I can remember trying to speak to tell it to go away, to leave me alone, and that I wouldn't let it have me. Eventually, the sound in my ears faded away and the pressure eased and I was able to move again. At the time, I didn't really know about sleep paralysis. It wasn't until I stumbled upon an article about it that I realized what I was suffering from. Although I now know that I'm not actually being attacked by some demonic force, it's still absolutely terrifying when you're stuck in the moment and unable to do anything except for wait for it to end. Totally get it. Right? And again, we hear those themes. We hear demonic, pressure on the chest, buzzing sound. This one is from Matthew. I see manifestations of horror in my bedroom at least once a week, from random people chilling in on a chair at the bottom of my bed to creepy old ladies to swarms of flying ants or bats. The worst thing I saw was someone hanging right above my head. I couldn't move. I wanted to cry. I couldn't sleep in my room for a few days after that. The likelihood of it happening increases whether there's someone in my bed. This is Mega Ox. Mega Ox, AWKS. This is mega awkward.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not an abbreviation.
Recently, some Tinder dude told me in the morning that I was like the fucking Exorcist last night, and he Blates wasn't...
It's too hard to read.
And Blates wasn't talking about activities that happened when I was awake. FML.
A person was terrified, like that there was something going on. And then they were the one terrifying their bed partner.
This one's from Naomi. I started experiencing sleep paralysis during the exam period of my first year at university, a very stressful time for me. The first time it happened, I woke up with the feeling that I was being suffocated. My bed was literally swallowing me up. The more I panicked, the faster my pulse and breathing became. The quicker I was disappearing into the bed. I couldn't move a muscle, and my attempts to scream were silent. After I calmed myself down, I kind of drifted out of my paralysis state and woke up completely. The second time it happened, I awoke to see a very tall man standing by my door, holding something behind his back and moving toward me very slowly. Once again, I couldn't move and I couldn't make a sound. It is definitely the most terrifying experience. So maybe I downplayed it a bit. Because that's
so many thoughts going through my head. Yeah.
Right. And we hear the theme of she was stressed.
Yeah.
It was during university, right? She was exams were going on. So she's probably lack of sleep. Something's going on there. The pressure on your chest and the breathing thing, what I read about it is, I've already kind of touched on it, is that your nervous system only allows your muscles to move a certain amount. And when you try to breathe in and scream or try to hyperventilate and you can't, that freaks you out even more, right? Because you're like, oh no, I can't breathe. And it's like, no. You're breathing. You're getting enough oxygen into your body that your brain requires. It's just that your nervous system isn't allowing you to breathe in fully because it doesn't allow you to, I don't know, what's the word, sigh during the night or hyperventilate or get too much oxygen into your blood. Like there are certain protections that your nervous system has in place. And so when you feel that, you're like, oh, I can't breathe. It's like, no, you are breathing and you can breathe and you're breathing right now.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't, you'd be dead.
Right. So,
and that's another important thing to kind of remind yourself about when you're going through that.
Yeah, it reminds. And another co-occurring condition that can be a driver of this is sleep apnea, or any obstructions to sleep or to breathing when sleeping can be a driver of this as well.
Yeah.
And then with the second person, with the bed partner person, even though we think, okay, they're hooking up with someone, they're relaxed. What I think maybe co-occurring explanation can think about substances, alcohol use or substance use can trigger these episodes as well.
Sure.
Or be associated because substances alter our sleep cycles on our especially like REM suppression.
Yeah.
So if REM is increased, just dysregulating REM. It's always paradoxical. Sometimes the treatments for these things are like a REM suppressive drug on purpose. So you have less of it, but you don't want to take substances that do that not systematically.
Yeah. One more. It happens every time I fall asleep on my back. I wake up and I can't tell if my eyes are open or shut, but I can see my whole room. A dark presence is lurking on top of my wardrobe. And as soon as I notice it, I try and scream, but I can't scream. I can't even move. The darkness slithers down the side of my wardrobe, across the floor, and looms over the end of my bed. Then it creeps all over me, trying to invade every orifice. Whew. I feel an immense pressure, like it has pinned me down and is pushing its way into my ears, eyes, and mouth. The darkness then screams a terrible screech in my face, and I try to scream back until eventually I manage to jerk my head and everything disappears, and I'm alone in the darkness. It's the most terrifying of experiences. And this is from Ting, T-I-N-G, Ting.
Yeah, and so a lot of that intruder hallucination theme that comes up, that, as you mentioned, there are evolutionary theories that would explain all of this, that like... And
the slithering, the snake-like stuff, we've talked about that before,
Well, so there are those two layers of it to me. It's the why these themes, and you've touched on them, that the common hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations that co-occur with sleep paralysis fall in those three categories of intruder, vestibular motor hallucination. So your body's moving in space. So maybe the floating or moving, floating above yourself, all that floating stuff. And then the chest pressure. So those three then may be linked. Intruder hallucination may be linked to the evolutionary fears of how vulnerable we are when we're going to sleep.
Right.
So how we're not nocturnal creatures. So nighttime is very dangerous for us, combined with the fact that then we go into this super vulnerable, not fully conscious state of sleep. And it's nighttime is scary. Like then we've just evolved all of these fears of intruders or predators, darkness. It's all scary stuff. And we know, that's it. And then there's the piece. So that's the layer of like the possible evolutionary explanation for that. You already touched on the possible physiological explanation for the chest pressure. So it's not a succubus or an incubus.
Right.
It's your body's own nervous system not in sync and shutting down those chest and breathing functions, slowing them down, not shutting them down. Mm-hmm. And then the floating one, the motor movement pieces, maybe we don't have like a solid theory on that one, but maybe more akin to that falling asleep, drifting off the sleep sensations, or
that's the funnest part sometimes.
It's super. Yeah. I actually liked that as a kid. I'm falling, but it's probably not alien abduction. Then there's the narrative around it. So that story you just told, I heard a person who's created a really strong narrative of this for herself or themselves that becomes a like self-fulfilling prophecy or perpetuating or becomes a nightmare. Now you have the co-occurring nightmare conditions that people might experience. And the identity-based piece of that too, like you go around telling people this is what happens to me, and you're more likely to experience it. You made a narrative, this is who I am, this is what it goes on, and your brain will fulfill that for you in the same way.
Right.
So this is where therapies that can help people adjust in the way that you have, where you're able to very much let it go each time. Yeah.
And that, I just tell people that I'm actually super terrified every single time. Like when I was doing my research for this, I was like, I'm going to kick off an episode. Like this is going to happen. Like I was totally ready for it last night. I was like, I've read so much about this. Like this is going to happen.
And so you're drinking a ton of caffeine. And so you're like, I'm just going to drink a ton of caffeine. I'm going to keep myself up, and then I'm going to drink a bunch of whiskey. And then no, you're not doing things to make it worse.
And I was kidding about the being terrified, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And I learned to live with it, and I don't suffer from it. It's not something, but again, I'm not trying to play down that anybody else can't suffer from that. Of course you can.
Yeah.
Everybody's got different things going on in their life. Like I said, I've had a really great life so far. But, if this is something that's being caused by trauma or being caused by a negative experience in your life, I'm not trying to downplay that at all. I'm sure that there are much more terrifying things that can happen in your life, in real life than in any dream, but then that can seep into your dreams and cause it to blow up and confabulate.
Yeah. And that's such a good point, because I'm not suggesting just let it go. Like, especially if there is a trauma-based link to any of this, like that isn't just not that easy to just to let go. And then, as you said, some of these experiences people can describe in your stories, they can be like lowercase t traumatic when they happen. So then people are in a heightened anxiety state about going into sleep. Yeah. So a lot of what I work with insomnia is people become really upset about sleep or their bed or their bedroom. It becomes an anxiety provoking place and gets what's really hard to do, when you're feeling like that.
Yeah.
Get to sleep. So there's so much to it. Just helping people understand the science of sleep and how amazingly variable it is, but also our daytime life influences our sleep. So the way we take care of ourselves during the day is a huge part we can control.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I did promise video evidence.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So this is a sleep study, and you've mentioned this as part of a symptom, or that sleep paralysis can be a symptom of this. And this is actually a sleep study on somebody with suspected sleep apnea, right? Okay. So they're doing a sleep study to check. Mm-hmm. And so, hold on, let me cue it up. You might hear. So I'm going to play this.
You primed me with all the...
Oh, this guy's going to prime the shit out of you. Yeah, this isn't, And this is actually one of my favorite guys. This is Nuke. Nuke's Top 5. If you guys don't watch it, you should. It's great.
Oh, boy.
Here, hit play if you can.
Aw.
Right? Thoughts?
Where was the setting?
What do you mean?
Was it at... He said it was during a sleep study, but was it...
It's in a sleep lab. An undisclosed location. He couldn't say what it was because, as you can see, this person is recording it on their cell phone. Like, they're recording the patient being recorded from their cell phone.
Okay.
So obviously this is a HIPAA violation, if nothing else.
Yeah, I was like, where did this come from?
In some, well, maybe not a HIPAA violation. I guess you can't.
You can't even identify them.
Yeah, you can't identify who that person is. Mm-hmm. But
the release of it would have been a HIPAA. Yeah.
Yeah, but go ahead and explain what you just saw.
I just saw a video of a woman or a person. You can't really. It's so fuzzy and black and white, lying in a bed, and they're rolling over, and then it looks like a really fuzzy something is moving on her pillow and maybe touching the side of her head at some point, and then she rolls over and that fuzzy thing is still kind of there. It just looks like it's been blurred.
Yeah.
In my mind, I think there's a cat on the pillow.
Oh. Let me see.
That's
Does
the
that look like a
picture
cat?
I paint in my head. I think there might be a cat sleeping with her.
But I think this is a sleep lab. Like, I don't think they allow
Well,
cats in the sleep
That's
labs,
why I
do
asked
they?
the context, because it could be in a nursing home. It could have been a community living center. Could it be an apartment? Obviously, could be this person's home, where there's many places where there could be an animal, like a cat on the bed.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think it's in a controlled environment because you can see like the hospital light above it.
Well, that's why I asked if it could have been like a
And-
nursing facility, though.
Right, but that thing didn't move like a cat. This thing is like,
How can you tell? It's just like a fuzzy.
Because it like fades away. It like bounces and fades away. You're right. It does kind of look like a cat at first, and then it just is like gone.
But it doesn't look like anything. I would think that from your tech perspective, couldn't that be completely altered to make it look like there was something on the bed?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, like this could all be After Effects, or this could all be some
Yeah.
kind of.
And
I guess what makes it more real, and maybe this is the trick, right, is that they actually have the brain waves and the breathing, the respiration,
The monitor on
they
the
have the
outside.
monitor like showing you what's going on with this person.
Mm-hmm.
And so the person stops breathing, and then you see the shadowy figure come in and shake them awake, and then they start breathing again once that shadowy figure comes in and wakes them up.
That's what they tell you in the narrative. Yeah,
that's what the
this
narrative
person
is
has
of
stopped
this.
breathing, and then this object next to them moves them, and they're shaken awake.
But
So
it
they can
doesn't
start breathing.
look-
And they say it's the ghost of her deceased husband
Right.
caring for her from beyond the grave, which is lovely.
Yeah, it is a lovely thought. It doesn't look like a cat to me, but you're right. There's a blur around it. You can
It's
almost
all
see-
blur. That's all I see.
Yeah, it's pretty potato quality. But anyway, I will make sure to put this into the show notes as well for everybody else to see. But Anna is convinced it's a cat, so I think that is her explanation for this.
But I don't.
Her scientific explanation.
You're the AV.
The cat.
What do you think? What do you
It's
think
the
it
sleep
is?
apnea cat.
What do you think it is?
The sleep apnea cat. It's this cat that goes around and monitors sleep apnea and bats at people when it notices that they're not breathing.
And that's a really cool potential function of an animal in a nursing facility. But
It's really hard to tell because there are reactions happening in the video, but also the reactions are obfuscated, I think, to hide the identity of who these people are, because they're clearly recording something that they shouldn't and passing it out on the internet. They're recording and passing out something on the internet, because I very much doubt that this patient consented to have this submitted to a paranormal review on YouTube. So always hard to tell when it comes from an unknown source, whether it's legitimate or not. If it is legitimate, like Anna said, it's so grainy. It's so grainy. What could be happening? Yeah, it could be a cat. It's really hard to tell. I would never say that this is something paranormal and put it up as proof, even though I just did put it up as proof. But I had to provide you some kind of evidence, and this actually took me a really long, because I was like, I saw that video at one point, and it took me probably an hour and a half to find this video today. So I had to show it. And it is interesting that like the person is apparently not breathing and then wakes themselves up. But that also is something that happens naturally when we sleep. Anyways, that's kind of the point of what apnea is supposed to be, which is your body doesn't wake itself up, or that it has a harder time waking itself up when you stop breathing. But anyway.
yeah, I think it's fascinating.
We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about I started this off and I said I was going to be a little bit different. And I guess I finally was a little bit different, at least different enough for Anna, where it kind of threw you off a little bit at the beginning of this whole thing, where you're like, whoa. I was really surprised that you didn't remember that story, because I did tell you about
yeah,
Yeah.
I did.
Okay. You do. Okay. But yeah, this is something that I need to objectively step away from, because it is something that I'm affected by.
Well, I do have to say that I'm grateful that you don't interpret it as a paranormal phenomena happening to you.
Right. That'd be really hard for me to do, because I don't necessarily believe it. I haven't seen, let me put it this way. I haven't seen any really great proof of paranormal things. I've never experienced anything paranormal, maybe once, but we'll talk about that in another episode.
Okay. The sleep apnea cat does not have you convinced.
The sleep apnea cat does not have me convinced. All of the explanations for this seem to be really deeply rooted in religion, which, like you said, makes sense, because at one point that's all we had. That's all the common person had to explain certain things that they didn't understand.
Well, and one of the most common moments of our lives when we feel a sense of uncertainty and vulnerability to the unknown is in the dark at night.
Yeah. And on that note, if you have ever had an episode of sleep paralysis and you want to talk about it or send us something about it, we'd love to hear from you. Send them to stories@paranormaloutsiders.com, Or if you have a story that you'd love to hear me and Anna talk about, send it along.
Paranormal topic you'd like us to break down.
Yeah. I guess just not any story. Like one time, I was like walking around, I saw like a double rainbow.
Right.
You know,
Can you talk about that? Double rainbows?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I will also add, of course, this isn't an advice podcast, but we talked about one of my favorite areas, which is helping people sleep. So if you're having trouble sleeping, having any of the possible range of difficulties we talked about, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine's a nice place to start. Their website can refer you to people who have expertise in helping.
The old AASM.
Yeah.
The ASM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Give them a call. Tell them Anna sent you.
Who?
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening in this week. Hope you enjoyed it.
Bye.